Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the annual Rally Organisers Conference 2022. This year's event is just a webinar, same as last year. Hopefully, we'll go back to having face-to-face ones from next year, but obviously this year we still weren't certain what was going on. So this was the safe option. So just before I started speaking, there was an agenda for the day, or say the day. We should be finished, I think, by about 1 o'clock. The running order is myself doing the welcome, which is now. The President's address, for those who don't know, Andrew Semple was one of the founders of the Code of Practice and Authorization Scheme, and he's our President. So I wheel him, as he says, I wheel him out every year to make a few words to encourage everybody in what we're doing. I have two talkers this morning. First one is Marion Virgo. She's a health and safety practitioner, and she's done quite a lot of work with shows involving animals, mainly agricultural, but the same rules apply to what we do. So she's going to give us the benefit of her experience on that. David Smith, he probably doesn't need any introduction to any of you. We'll move on with technical matters. And then I've got John Y, who is a safety officer at several rallies and a health and safety professional as well. He's helping me to develop, in fact, he's doing most of the work at the moment, some training workshops for organisers, rally monitors and safety officers. And he's going to give you an insight on where he's got with that to show you what we're trying to achieve. And then I'll give you a little update on general matters at the end. If you have any questions, please put them through. Nick, who's in the background, you can't see and probably won't hear, he will sort them through and we'll try and get them answered for you. What we will possibly do, if needed, and I'll get Nick to let me know this, is have a 5-minute break between the training workshops and general matters so that we can put any answers together we need. So there may be a small gap there. It all goes to plan. We should be done by about 1 o'clock. So hopefully you'll all enjoy this, and I'll now hand over to Andrew for the President's address.
Thank you, Charlie. Welcome to everyone. Sounds very grand, but you know, I hope you're not expecting wonderful words of wisdom and erudite comment, Charlie, because you've just got me. But, having been sat in Charlie Cribbs's chair for 6 years and been on a rally committee, I can appreciate some of the challenges that everybody faces when they're running a rally. I mean, we've now got COVID to cope with still, legislation, coal problems, inflation, and now, of course, an unimaginable world situation which just complicates the job as well. But having said all that, I'm convinced that rallies and similar gatherings have a role to play in providing relatively cheap day out for families, providing fun, nostalgia, and importantly, education, because as each generation comes forward, they get further away from our core old-fashioned, old-time entertainment, if you like. So it's an important aspect. And of course, many events do raise money for good causes, which is also an excellent motivation. So I would like to thank Charlie and Stuart and all the rally advisors for the hard work that they put into the thing. And it does give me a certain amount of pleasure and satisfaction to see how the code has developed and how rallies have become much more easily able to cope with the ever-growing list of legal minefields that seem to get sown in our way. Can I, just before I disappear, mention one thing, which is gift aid. From the 1st of April, the Trust will qualify for gift aid. So if you're renewing as a member, you will be invited to fill in a gift aid form. It doesn't actually cost you anything. it costs the Chancellor, because the gift aid money comes out of what you pay over in tax, and the Trust gets a bit of it back, and it will be hugely beneficial to the Trust. We've never had more pressure on our monies and our expenses than we have at the moment, what with coal situation and various other elements like that. There's a lot of expense and a hell of a lot of work going on. David Smith will allude to that later, and I do want to thank him and the team in the Heritage Fuel Alliance who've been doing a lot of work. We've been blindsided on more than one occasion by developments that weren't expected, but they're fighting hard and working hard to try and get it right. So there we are. I'll hand over and let you get on with the meat of the day, Charlie. But as I say, welcome to everybody, and I hope you have a fruitful morning. Thank you.
So we're over to our first speaker, Marion, who's going to talk about animal welfare.
Good morning, everybody. As Charlie's mentioned, my name is Marion Virgo. I'm a health and safety consultant who has been in this role for 30 years now. Sounds very depressing. And I have been an event safety consultant for the last 15 years, predominantly working with agricultural societies, dealing with their main shows throughout the year, including their smaller shows, such as spring shows, autumn shows, winter fairs, and Connect with the Countryside, which is a children's event. So today I'm going to be talking about animals being on site, and then I'll be having a quick bit on COVID and pandemics, because obviously, although most of the things have changed from last year regarding COVID, there are still things that you might want to do, taking into account that we're still not out of it totally. And I've done 6 COVID events where we had the full COVID regulations through to the minimal requirements. Next slide, please. So this is just a picture of what I have seen in some of the steam rallies that I've been to. I actually live in Woodcote, so we have our very own steam rally. Unfortunately, it's been cancelled this year due to circumstances where they've got no site, but I have visited that quite a few times. Next slide, please. So the steam events that I've visited, most of the times you have a small area with a few animals in it, mainly ponies, a couple of pygmy goats, you might have sheep, calves. It's very rare that you'd have any of the larger animals, but sometimes they are there. Where animals are concerned, they are under, in this sort of environment, they'll be under environmental health. Larger environments, they're under the HSE. So when you are organising your events, if you're going to have animals on site, you need to make sure that the area is clear of all feces. If it's a field that has been used for cattle or horses or anything like that, then it needs to be clear of all feces at least 30 days prior to the event. I believe they've actually changed that to 3 weeks, but I would stick to the 30 days, and then you're minimising the risk of any infection. So that's clearing the whole land where the public will be of any faeces, removing it completely. Ensuring that you've got public liability insurance is very important. And it's also important that your exhibitors have public liability insurance. So if you're getting a local petting farm to bring animals along, or local exhibitors that bring, you know, sheep or goats along, you need to make sure that they've got public liability insurance in place. And then, of course, you come down to the dreaded risk assessments, making sure that they're available and that you have specific risk assessments regarding animals. So this is the likelihood of infection from parasites or bacteria that the animals might carry that can be passed on to humans, the likelihood of injuries, you know, the odd goat biting a child, a horse pony biting a child. And then you have to look at who will be at risk. And the high risk people are the very young, the elderly, the immunocompromised, so people who have cancer or have had transplants, disabled people, and pregnant women. Next slide, please. So the bacterium that are most likely to be found anywhere near animals, and the most predominant one is E. coli 0157. This is the one that you mainly want to be protecting against. E. coli is found in the intestines of healthy animals, goats, deer, and sheep. It causes contaminations through the feces, infected coats, and infected fencing. And the illnesses are vomiting, diarrhea, and unfortunately can damage internal organs. There was an incident in 2010, I think it was, at Godstone Farm, which brought the guidance in, where a number of children went down with E. coli, and a number of them had problems with their kidneys and livers not functioning after the infection. It was found that those children were infected from picnic tables where the animals had been allowed to jump up and down onto them, primarily goats. So these are the sorts of things that you've got to be looking around and preventing. Other bacterium that can be found is Cryptosporidium Parvum. This is found in soil, water, or again, contaminated surfaces. Predominantly comes from calves and goats. Causes vomiting, diarrhea, intestinal distress. Now, I might not pronounce this properly. Chlamydophila abortus. This is predominantly during the season of breeding, and the main people at risk here are pregnant women. This bacterium can cause abortion in sheep, cattle, and goats, but it has been found in cows, and it's caused by inhaling aerosols from contaminated dusts, and can cause abortion in pregnant women. Toxoplasmosis is found in animal feces, specifically cats and dogs, and can be from contaminated soil. This can cause swollen lymph glands, aches and pains, headache, fever, and inflammation of the muscles. And then finally, Salmonella can be found on contaminated feces, infected animals, predominantly chickens and birds, and causes diarrhea, fever, stomach cramps, and vomiting. It is wise to be aware of these types of bacterium that you may come into contact with. The predominant one will be the E. coli one, because a lot of the animals that you will have coming on site will be different to what we use in agricultural shows, in the fact that in agricultural shows, the animals are washed 2 or 3 times a day, whereas your animals on your site, they probably won't be cleaned before they come onto site. So they'll come straight out of the field and onto your site. Next slide, please. So things that you should do as event organisers: ensure your exhibitors do not bring on site any known infected animals, and also any animals that are likely to cause problems. I have had on occasion the odd bull escape as it's being brought onto an agricultural site, go through the pig area, the sheep area, through the external fence, and have to be darted at the other end of the car park. And when the exhibitor was spoken to about the animal, he said, well, we shouldn't have brought it anyway. So it's being aware of those sorts of things. Consider how your visitors will visit the area. Will there be a lot of children? And where the area will be. Ensure all fencing is disinfected before use and throughout the event on a regular basis. So most exhibitors will bring their own fencing. If they do, they need to make sure that it's disinfected. Environmental health will want you to put in place that it's disinfected at specific times. That's not a requirement. There's no requirement that it has to be every hour, every 2 hours, every 3 hours. But if you can say to them, we're doing it on a regular basis, that should be adequate. Ensure suitable hand washing facilities available. Basins with cold water is not adequate. I have been to a number of events, steam rallies and smaller events, where you go to the small petting area and there's a couple of basins with water, with hand sanitizer, and that is it. It has to be water that is running. So you can get, there's some pictures in a moment that you can get some portable hand washing facilities, but you need to make sure that the hand washing facilities you provide have soap, water and disposable hand towels, and that the wastewater is removed. So that either there's a receptacle and that's emptied on a regular basis, or it's removed into the ground. You need to make sure that there's regular checks of facilities. So as an event organizer, you can't put that down just to the exhibitors. You need to make sure that what facilities are there, hand washing facilities, is adequate and is maintained throughout the event. Next slide, please. Ensure suitable antibacterial hand wash is available. Antibacterial gel on its own is not adequate. You need to make sure that if your visitors get their hands dirty, that they can wash the dirt off. Antibacterial gels will not remove dirt. They'll remove bacteria, but not the dirt. Ensure you've got suitable signage regarding washing hands and risks to humans. Unfortunately, nowadays you can be more death by signage, but it is the best way to go. You've got enough signage, then everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. Have signage showing alternative hand washing and toilet facilities. So if you've got toilet facilities on site, that they can go and wash their hands there as well. Ensure the public is advised to wash their hands when leaving the area. Again, that could be the exhibitor or steward responsibility for that area. Ensure feces is removed of and disposed of suitably away from the public areas. So if you've got children going into pens where there are animals and they've defecated, then you need to make sure that that's removed as soon as possible so that they don't get contaminated. And ensure that any animals are away from your food stalls, from ice cream vans and picnic areas, so that there is a definite division of areas. Next slide, please. So these are some examples of portable hand washing. They're usually under about £1,000, the two, the one on the left and the middle one. But you might be able to contact any local agricultural society near you that may have these, and you might be able to rent them off them. Or there are some companies that will rent them. But if you've got a local agricultural society that you get on well with, if they've got them, they might rent them to you. And then on the right is a suitable anti-bac station. Next slide, please. So these are the sorts of signage that you should have up. Wash your hands after petting animals. Don't climb onto fences. Be kind to the animals, because kids aren't usually. Next slide, please. So obviously we were talking about the abortion bacterium. So this is just when you're around lambs or anything like that, where pregnant women are around lambs, and also no eating or drinking near animals. Again, these are the sorts of things that a steward is required to keep an eye on, or exhibitors. Next slide, please. So there's some important documentation that will help you in giving you some guidance. The preventing or controlling of ill health from animal contact at visitor attractions. This is an industry code of practice that has recently been updated in the last year. And I've sent a copy through to Charlie. So if anybody wants a copy, it is free, but there is a copy available. The other legislation that you need to be aware of is the Health and Safety at Work Act, the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations, Control of Substances Hazardous to Health, because bacteria comes under that legislation, and the Reporting of Injuries, Diseases and Dangerous Occurrences Regulations. Where bacteria is concerned and where the infections are concerned, it is unlikely that you will know that there has been any infection until at least a couple of days after the event. But as long as you've got your paperwork available, then if that you are inspected, you've got everything there for them to see. Next slide, please. So moving swiftly on to COVID. Like I say, I've done 6 COVID events, including one large agricultural show where we had a number of animals on site, and we had up to, I think it was 50,000 people over a 3-day period. So we've gone from the full face masks, hand washing, antibacterial, distancing, social distancing, and everything like that, through to just hand bacterial and face masks. So if you are, we're still in the COVID phase, although it's the legislation and the recommendations have reduced, you still will need to do a COVID risk assessment, and you'll need to decide what you want to do for COVID or regarding COVID. It could be that you still want any enclosed areas, people to wear face masks. It might be that you want to limit the numbers of people that are going into enclosed areas or that are close together. But that will all come down to your risk assessment. There is a limited risk for outdoor events. You know, we had 50,000 people at our summer show last year. We never had one ping of COVID. So, you know, there is limited risk outside. like I say, you might want to consider face masks inside marquees, although it's not a legal requirement at the moment. I would advise suitable signage on advising on where your toilets are and the hand washing locations, and have antibacterial gel located throughout the site at various different places, near food outlets, picnic areas, near your animals, and then around and about the site. Next slide, please. And there you are. Is there any questions?
Yes, Marion, we added a question from a lady called Irene, which was around the time you were speaking about fields having to have feces removed 30 days before the event. The question is, you mentioned horses and cattle. Does the same requirement apply to sheep? And are there any alternative mitigating actions, such as topping the field?
Yeah, it will include all animals that are outside, all livestock animals. All the feces need to be removed from the public area. So if the topping is done beyond the 30 days or on the 30 days before, then that should clear the area, because it will go, into the soil.
Great. Is there any more, Nick?
No, that was the only question.
Marion, thank you very much. If we get any more questions come in for you before the end, we'll make sure you get to see them so you can answer them in a written form, and then we'll put the answers out at the end. So if anybody else has got any more questions for Marion, Marion, I think that was very informative. I hope we haven't frightened too many people, but the reason that I asked you to do this is because I know a lot of people are very unaware of what the rules are with animals on a rally site. So I thank you very much for this, and I know we've been trying to do it for a couple of years, but for different reasons we couldn't do it. So thank you very much for that. Over to you, David.
You're muted, David.
It's too technical for me, Andrew, sorry.
Yeah, I know, but I'm here to guide you.
Good morning, everyone. David Smith, some of you may know me. I'm responsible for the Technical Services Unit, and Charlie's invited me to talk to you about technical matters. Today I've chosen an update on coal, which I'm sure is everyone's major topic at the moment. I've got a little bit about red diesel, and then I want to talk to you about the authorised events, the web services that the NTET provide to the authorised events. I'll come back to that a little bit later on. So moving on, let's have a see what we're going to do. Let's go to my next slide. I'm controlling my own destination here. So my coal update topics are, very briefly, what have we been doing? What's the current situation? What does the future look like? A summary of what's happening. A little bit about trials. So what have we been doing? Well, we've been looking for reliable and suitable sources of fuel, and that's been proving to be difficult. In Andrew's original opening remarks, he said we've been having difficulties that we never even planned and thought about in the recent times. Sudden closure of fossil farm, of course, the sad Ukraine situation has spoiled lots of things for lots of people. And why should we be crying an hour beer thinking of that? But we've had some difficulties, but we're making a little bit of progress. We've been talking to suppliers and potential partners, and a little bit more of that later, because there's a shrinking market of suppliers, and we've been trying to encourage people to join us. We've been helping to define the specification for new and alternative fuels for road steam. Why is this? Because from May 2023, part of the unintended consequences of the Environment Bill will see that it will be illegal to burn bituminous coal in a domestic setting. What will happen after that, we don't know. It's not directed directly at heritage burning. But if I'm not fetching in a lot of bituminous coal, will I fetch it at all? That's the difficulty that we're faced with. We've been doing some trials already. We've been doing some loose trialing. Burn what you like and tell us how you get on with it. And Tom Atwood, who's not with us today, one of the members of my team, has been handling this, and other trials we're carrying out as well. And we've been lobbying. We've been talking to DEFRA. We've been talking to anybody within the government's departments who will listen. We've been working with the Heritage Fuels Alliance. And most recently, we've been joining with the National Transport Trust in its endeavours, in its campaign to mobilise mobile heritage. One of the things we need to remember about the National Transport Trust is that it is the only organisation that represents every aspect of heritage transport. Anything that's on wheels, it has got a consideration for. And they've asked us all to come together, the railways, the boats, the heritage museums, anybody that's got vehicles of a heritage nature to come together, and let's put a proposition to government about how they're going to deal with this very important aspect of our heritage. So let's talk about the current situation. This is just a reminder, some of you will know this. 10 years ago, we mined 15 million tons of coal in the UK. Today, this has dropped to around about 1 million tons, 5 years, I should say, 1 million tons. Today, we're seeing the last of a few thousand tons coming from Fossey whilst they're still permitted to mine. And their license is due to expire in October. There's loads and loads of rumours about them getting extensions. I can tell you, don't put any bets down. Don't put any bets down. By the end of 2022, there will be only one mine left in the UK, and that's mining anthracite, not bituminous coal. And we'll talk a little bit later about the appearance of terrific Welsh steam ovoids, which is a result of that type of fuel. And I'll relate some of those experiences to you, because I know some of you may not be engine owners, but as rally organisers, and particularly those that are supplying fuel into your rallies, then don't make the mistake of buying in the wrong fuel, even at these testing times. Could be embarrassing. So the current position is that coal supply in the UK is tight, but it is still available. It is still available. Moving forward then, there is uncertainty as we move through the season around availability, price and quality. And of course, the Ukraine situation is not helping one iota, not at all. And no one's in a position to second guess what's going to happen there and when it's going to happen. And of course, I've already mentioned that there's going to be a knock-on effect, which we can't measure, which is full of speculation and conjecture. That the law says that on May the 1st, 2023, it will be illegal to burn fuel, bituminous coal, in a domestic setting. It doesn't say anything about burning it in a traction engine, in a railway engine, or at a heritage museum, or anywhere else. It's simply in a domestic location. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. There are lots of rumours about this. It's the banning of burning of bituminous coal in a domestic setting, and I should emphasise, in England. You can still burn it in Northern Ireland, you can still burn it in Wales, and you can still burn it in Scotland. Why we should choose to pick on England, I do not know. So Fossey Fan, we've mentioned too, there's no extension to licence terms. There's a lot of problems at Fossey Fan that the public don't understand. If you live close by Fossey Fan, you wouldn't be their best fan, I have to tell you. We love its coal, we love its output, but they're not friendly to their neighbours. And they've got an unfriendly track record, unfortunately. One of which is that there's a huge hole at Fossey Fan that they're supposed to backfill as they've gone along. And it's had a number of owners over the years, so this is not down to one particular person. this hole hasn't been filled at the rate it ought to be, and there's supposed to have been an accumulation of money that pays for the backfilling, and there is a £40 million shortfall in that money. So things aren't looking good for Fossifan. And what they've been arguing is if you allow us to extend the facility, it'll help us raise the money to put in the stuff back in the ground. £40 million. You've got to turn out a lot of coal to make a £40 million profit just to fill a hole in the ground. It's not going to happen. So it's set to close in October 2022. We don't see that extending. All the output currently, and this is what caused the upset 6 weeks ago now, suddenly overnight, and we knew that this was actually happening, but the extent of it went right past us. Tata were paying a premium to the owners of Fossifan to crush coal because they couldn't get it into the country in the normal routes in sufficient large enough supply. So rather than put it on the back of a lorry or grade it and put it on the back of a lorry, all of the output that came out of Fossifan was crushed. Tata paid a handsome premium per tonne for that facility. And initially that premium was passed on to the heritage user. 60 or 70 quid a tonne was added because otherwise it would have gone to Tata. But the grading plant that would have otherwise produced lump coal broke down. And the owners of Fossifan said, we can't afford to put this right. So there is no coal to pay you £60 premium for heritage burn. There won't be any. So there's been a number of conversations between Fossifan owners and Hargreaves. They're one of their major buyers of their fuel. Hargreaves have offered all sorts of things. They've offered to repair the plant. They've offered to take coal off site and grade it. And I know from a week ago that they haven't had a response at all from the owners of Fossifan to those conditions or those offers. So I'm going to say to you, frankly, rest in peace, Fossifan. We've enjoyed you for as long as you've been around, but there is no more. So Hargreaves, who I've mentioned, have recently brought to market ahead of all of their plans. They were jettisoned into the market because of the problems with Fossifan. And they've introduced a coal that is bound to, it's really anthracite bound together with, they call it a secret ingredient. Well, the general ingredients in the market are either cement or molasses, but we don't know what, they won't tell us what it is. It was new to the market in February 22. It's a full anthracitic coal. It's got no bituminous content. And the trials that we've been undertaking with Tom Upwood in care, some of the people have described it as trying to set fire to stone. It's not for the rookie user. A reason I'm labouring this, ladies and gentlemen, is because as rally organisers supplying in to your exhibitors, your steam exhibitors, don't foist Trevithick Welsh steam ovoids on your engines, owners. If you're simply standing there looking nice, smelling nice, and doing the odd parade around a ring and no working, this is not the fuel for you. I have to tell you. You've got to take your hat off to Hargreaves. They're trying to help, and indeed they've modified the blend for road traction. But it's not a coal that you can just let the engine sit there and do nothing. The fire will go out. And we've had experiences of people going out on road runs, taking a long while to raise steam, brilliant fuel while it's working, pop in the pub, have a bit of lunch, come out, no fire. It's not for the rookie user. It burns well when there's a good draft. The experiences vary, as I've explained. It is not for the rookie user. You've got to know what it does, and you've got to be prepared to change everything that you've learned to do. Fortunately, we fed back some of the results of our trials to Hargreaves, and they have offered to modify the composition to give better control. And ironically, they're actually having to add bituminous coal to the anthracitic coal to give it some of the performance values of the coals that we're used to. But we'll see. They've offered us some trial material, and we're going forward with that. The stocks on the ground at the moment are very limited. In England, that is, we've got Scottish or English coal around. We've also got Kazakhstan trebles, but that stock is dwindling also. we've got Colombian coal. Now, one of my friendly coal merchants who's been giving me a lot of advice about this tells me that this is the posh man's coal. It costs you an arm and a leg, and it's really very, very good in a domestic environment. But as another friend of ours said, who's used it on his traction engine, quite frankly, it's like feeding strawberries to a donkey. Your fire hole door will never be closed, and you'll be bankrupt at the end of the journey. So it's you pay your money and you take your pick. Now there's a little bit of a light here. I've spoken with Alistair Hayes of Hayes Fuels in Belfast. When I spoke to them a few weeks ago now, 3 weeks, they had 38,000 tons of Russian coal on the deck in Belfast. Now, this won't sit comfortable with everybody for obvious reasons. They were awaiting another 38,000 ton coming in, and that ship was impounded just as things started to get stupid. But anyway, Alistair says that he will ship in 29-ton loads to anywhere in the UK, obviously at a cost, but not an eye-watering cost. He won't ship you 1 ton or 2 tons unless you go and fetch it yourselves or organise its delivery. He's only interested in delivering in 29-ton loads, in articulated loads, and he will do that. Now, I've sent people to him in the last few days, and they're getting all sorts of positive responses from him. So he's still there and wanting to help. And would you believe, we've still got substantial stocks of manufactured ovoids. These are smokeless fuels that are used for the domestic market. And our trials have shown us that in the circumstances that I've described about just sat there doing nothing, they're quite okay to use on a traction engine that is not doing a lot of work. And if you want to use those and then blend them with another fuel that you've got to give you the working capability, that's not a bad idea. But this is all experimentation, I have to tell you. So what does the future look like? Everybody in the coal industry bluntly has got the jitters. This is despite having faced up to government for a long, long while. Last 4 years this has been going on. Do you realise the consequences of your actions? Well, these are the consequences of their actions. Your local coal merchant is leaving us in fairly large numbers. The number of serious importers, we've got 3 that are worth talking about. I'm not saying there are not more than 3, but there's 3 who have got the infrastructures in place that will give them a little bit of longevity. The effects of the ban on domestic burn after May 23 is subject to loads of conjecture as to what will happen. The fact that the ban will take place is a fact, but what's happening thereafter is difficult. I'll give you a measure of it. Prior to the Ukraine situation, it took about 6 weeks to get a load of coal from Kazakhstan into the UK, across country or around the sea route and into the UK. Today, if there was no Ukraine conflict, given the price of coal as high as it is, the importers have got a dilemma. They believe, and I don't know whether they're right or wrong in believing this, they believe that the cost of fuel will fall at some time in the near future. Really? So we're not buying any coal, because by the time it gets here in 6 weeks, it will have lost some of its value. We're not in the game of losing money. We're in the game of making money. So we're not buying you any coal. So we've like choked the supply because we didn't spend the money in case we lose the money. It's a very bizarre situation that we've got. And that's where a lot of the conjecture is about what's happening after May the 23rd. We are talking with an Australian supplier who says, we'll send you some coal at your cost. If you like it, we can come to some arrangement. Now, I've talked to some of the major importers who have also talked to Australian suppliers in the past. Always, there's been one issue: the cost and the time to get it into the UK. Now, things have changed. If there's not the demand for domestic coal, bituminous coal, then the amount of coal that the heritage industry burns starts to become the big factor. And the total amount of coal that the heritage industry burns is 40,000 tonnes a year. 4,500 tonnes is all that the traction engine fraternity burns, or thereabouts. Now tell me, who's going to hire a boat that travels once a year to bring a 40,000 tonne load of coal across the oceans into the UK and make a profit? You're talking a significant pound per tonne by the time that project's taken place. So all of the goodwill is there, the wherewithal and the good and the cost of transport has got a great big question mark over it. We're looking at it. We've not said chuck it in the dustbin, but we're trying to see what help we can get. Quite recently, we've been talking to Coal Products Limited, CPL. Some of you guys I know have already been talking to them as well. They're the UK's largest manufacturer of smokeless fuels. And we met them fairly recently, had a very, very long heart-to-heart conversation about them, with them, I should say. They're innovative. They're creating new fuels. They understand the problems about environment. They're trying to create a fuel that domestically will suit the environment. And recently they've offered to try and make a fuel that will suit the heritage environment. And we're involved with them in creating a traction engine type fuel. Why don't we burn what the railways burn? Well, the performance of a traction engine, although it's similar in design, its actual performance varies considerably to that of a railway locomotive. A traction engine today spends a lot of its time looking pretty, turning over the flywheel nice and slowly, smelling, everybody going ooh and ah, and all the rest of it. And occasionally we get it, we wake it up, we take it for a run around the ring. Some people take them out on the road. Well, that's good, that's really good. But the fuels that we've got on offer now don't lend themselves wholesale to those varying environments. That's the problem. We were spoilt by fossil fan. So CPL has offered to help the heritage sector. They're committed to working with the sector to find a suitable fuel to future-proof the sector. Their main aims are to produce a fuel which mimics the performance of coal as closely as possible, make it as kind to the environment as possible, go from smoky to smokeless, from bitumen to biomass, make it future-proof. All the ingredients must be widely available and the end product must adhere to all the environmental legislation. Make it easy to purchase in the way that we normally would want to purchase it. So to summarize this part of my presentation, after May the 1st, 23, bituminous coal cannot be burnt domestically in England. It can be burnt in Northern Ireland, in Scotland and in Wales. Bizarre. CPL are committed to helping us, and we've already joined with them. They're supplying trial fuels to us. Tommy Upwards working with that now. CPL got a large manufacturing and distribution and R&D capability, and they're trying to help the heritage sector. Hargreaves are modifying the composition of Trevithick overweights. We mustn't discount Hargreaves. They're doing what they're doing in their way. CPL are a different outfit, so I'm not punching CPL against Hargreaves. They're both in this together with us, trying to get a way forward. And Hargreaves have got this rather awkward product, anthracitic product that they've based their help on. And with the feedback we've given to them, they're trying to modify the composition. So current availability is tight. Given all that I've said to you today, if you can find it in the quantity that you want it in, I'm going to say to you, if you can afford it, buy it. Don't wait. I was talking to a rally organizer yesterday who said, oh, well, by September, it'll all be done and dusted, or whenever it is their rally was going to take place. Well, it might well be, and good luck if it is. But my advice is, if you can afford it and you can find it, buy it now, if you want your rally to go forward. Gold prices increasing. there is a measure of the cost of coal, which is called the European Coal Index, I've learned. And it's an index that reflects the price, the cost of putting a ton of coal on the deck at Rotterdam. Rotterdam used to be at one time the world's leading distribution depot for coal from all around the world to all around the world. So they use that to measure. And in the last 6 weeks, that index has gone up 550%. Now, not all of it gets passed to the end user. The shippers absorb it, the distributors absorb it, and obviously some of it gets onto the price. I'm told it doesn't all get put on the end product, but everybody's cutting back, you can imagine. So uncertainty remains on supply, particularly for the second half of the summer. There are smokeless ovoids available, and I suggest to you that you might try them and get some of your traction engine friends to try them and see if they will work. So that's the end of my bit on coal. I don't think there's time for me to take questions and answers now, but I will endeavour to answer them right at the end, or talk back to you individually through question and answers, or through my email address there. So Charlie, can I move on to my next bit? Have I still got time?
Yes, carry on, David, you're fine.
Okay, I'm going then, fine. I'm going to talk about red diesel and the law changes after the 1st of April 2022. What's it got to do with us? Well, what it's got to do with us is that you're going to hear it from the horse's mouth, and we get rid of some of the speculation that is on about this. It's not all good news, I have to tell you, but at least you'll hear it from the right place. What's happening? From the 1st of April, the rules on who can and who can't use red diesel, which is rebated diesel, DERV some people call it, is changing. Basically, industrial and commercial use of red diesel will no longer be allowed. And I can tell you from first-hand experience, I've got many friends in agriculture where I live, and many friends in industry, in the construction industry where I live, all around me, and they are all entirely up in arms, absolutely incandescent red over this issue. The aim of this change is to incentivize users to choose more environmentally friendly sources of power. So they've got to go to white diesel, onto which they will pay their tax, the fuel tax, a tax that they've not paid before, and then there's a hope that more environmentally fuels will come along. Well, they are coming along, of that there's no doubt, but there's tax on those fuels. And the idea is to take money off the agricultural and commercial industries. Although it's not widely been advertised, we understand that the HMRC will be policing these rules vigorously. Some of these rules actually that I'm going to mention have actually applied for a long while, but it's never really been in anybody's interest to try and push them too hard. But now, because of this step change in direction, we're told they're going to come down hard on anybody who breaks the rules. Well, what are they? Let's have a look. Who can still use it? There are exemptions. Red diesel can still be used by those in agriculture, horticulture, fishing and forestry, as well as the rail industries, and for heating of non-commercial premises. Right, okay. Travelling fairs can use red diesel for power generation and for heating their vans, but not for powering the lorries used for transport. Right, okay. Diesel engine tractors can't use red diesel if taking part in a rally or a road run. Now I'm going to qualify that because you'll see later that there are exceptions. If the diesel engine tractor is not itself part of a legitimate agricultural business. So if it's privately owned and it's only ever used for road runs or going to rallies, It's a nice international harvester or whatever it is. There's only one of it left. It can't run on red diesel. Whether it has now or not is irrelevant. It cannot in the future. If your tractor is legally used for permitted purposes and you wish to take it to a show or road, then the fuel system has to be purged, including changing filters and refilled with white diesel. Well, that was the original intention. And the NFU went berserk about this. They said, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely stupid. So there's been a bit of a backstep. So if the event that you're going to is described as an agricultural show or a ploughing match, then tractors can legally use red diesel, including the journey to and from the show. But that's only if that vehicle is legitimately employed within those acceptable constraints. It's in an agricultural business. So you couldn't take your privately owned combine, international harvester, or your Ferguson or whatever you've got. You couldn't take it privately owned into a ploughing match and join in. It would have to be running on white diesel. If you're in the industry, it can run on red diesel. If you're not in the industry, it's got to run on white diesel. So I've given you all of this simply because I want you to understand it is not your responsibility as an event organizer to police what is in the fuel tank. Let's have it said straight away. It is not. You've got enough on your plate. It is the owner of the vehicle's responsibility to comply with these laws, not yours. Leave it to the HMRC. They have said they're going to police this vigorously. We'll let them service it vigorously. It may be prudent, in order to show that you are acting responsibility, and I'm not sure about this, but I will mention it, to include a comment in your entry paperwork stating that red diesel can't be used in road-going vehicles at your event. That's the advice I've been given by some other organisations. Whether you decide to do that, I'm going to say to you, that's your choice. All I've done, I believe, hopefully, is giving it you straight from the horse's mouth as what should be happening and what can't be happening, and then you can make your own mind at how you deal with it. If you want any further information, you can go to that website. And incidentally, these slides will be available on the NTET's website after this webinar has finished, for you to go through in your own time and have a look at them. So you can go and look at that there. Okay. So now, Charlie, if I can move on, everybody must be getting quite fed up with my voice, but we'll plow on.
We're all used to it, David. You carry on.
But I'm going to talk about the web services. I'll try and speed this up a little bit. The web services website was set up as an exclusive service to authorized events. It hasn't been developed quite as far as we wanted to take it, but that doesn't mean it won't be. It's coming back to life again now, particularly post-COVID. And that's its address, webservices.org.uk. It includes the NTET's disc checking service. More of that later. It currently includes a documents library. If you were to go to the login screen, you would be faced with this screen here. You can only get onto this service if you are the organizer of a current authorized event. So if you haven't got those authorization codes and pass and web pass, you will not get onto the website. I'm sorry, it's exclusive for your benefit. There's some very important information in here, which we hope will be helpful to you. It's not for public consumption. Simple. It's part of the deal that we made with you when you paid for your authorization. We learned yesterday of an organizer who, having received her authorization letter, quite likely copied and pasted the information from the email that she had into those boxes there. And then she started to ring round, trying to find out what she was doing wrong. I think if she hadn't have spoken to me, the next phone call would have been to the Queen, because she'd been round everybody. But the answer, quite frankly, was simple. There's nothing wrong with her endeavors whatsoever. But when you copy and paste something, and it's important, like it's going to give you access, it's important that you only ever embrace from end to end the characters that are meaningful. If you include spaces in your copy and paste, when you paste them in, those spaces become part of the submission that you're making. So 22/0718 space won't be recognized, but 22/0718 full stop, end of, will be. And that was the issue that the young lady was experiencing. It was as simple as that. So she hand typed it. I said, hand type it in, see what happens. Well, it's worked. I said, now paste it in. It doesn't work. I've laboured the point, but I think you might get it. If you paste it in, just make sure that you include only the characters that are controlling what's happening. Okay, those details are on the letters of authorization that you've had. Please do not share these details. It's in your interest to maintain the value of the content of these services. Please don't share them. So when you've successfully logged in, you'll get these selections here. Do I want to check disks, or do I want to go to the document library? Well, I'm going to go to disks first. It's just the top of the list. I'm going to go. The document library has got 4 groups currently: Code of Practice, Purple Guide, the conference. You'll see that this presentation will arrive in the conference when we finish. And then there's general information in another group there. Okay. So insurance scheme. I'm going to fly through this because I know you've heard enough about me. We just recently overhauled it. But it's now a centralized scheme. All of the brokers that service this scheme are talking to it, to the same system. They've not got them local. They're all on the what is called a cloud system. It's centralized. All of the brokers get to it, but they can only see their own data. It makes life much easier for us. The disk is easier to print, and it allows the disks actually to be distributed by either mail or by email. Makes life a lot easier. And we've got a subset of this app that lets the owner of that disk have it on his telephone, on his phone, on his mobile phone. He can actually show the safety officer, there's my disk for my engine, if you like. So this leads us to where we are. This bottom slide here is what we're interested in. The output from this service gets posted onto the website. We're going to get to it. Let's go quickly. Come on. Right. My suggestion is that you get your list of entrants set at the side of you, or you've only got one to check, it doesn't matter. But have your draft program details ready, and start to put the insurance, start to put the vehicle registration number in and work through the list entry by entry. And when you've finished, you can record the results or print them on a report. So here we go. Okay, 49. I've put that in. I've clicked search. The system comes back and says, by the time you hold your rally, which on the 18th of September, I don't know if Bedford and Steam and Country Fair are watching. I'm sorry, I've cribbed your event. This number 12556B was issued against OK49. The boiler explosion insurance expires on the 29th of the 3rd, 23. PL insurance expires on 29th of the 3rd, 23, and the inspection certificate expires on the 31st of December 22. So at the time of your rally, unless anything changes, then that machine, that exhibit will be in ticket and with all the protection around it that you require for your event. So if it's a casual one-off inquiry, then you don't need to commit it to a report. You just say pass. But as you go along, you can add it to the report, keep going. So I've just got a report there with 2 entries on. And at the end of it, you can imagine I've got 20, 30 entries, whatever. I just press the print button and I've got a list there. What is this doing for me? As the safety officer, I now do not need to go and visit every traction engine that's visiting or steam pressure system that's visiting my event. All I've got to do is to go to ones that says fail. Because if you failed at the time that I'm looking, I could be looking on the Thursday night of your event on Friday. They've all moved. Everybody's gone and got their disc apart from these 5 engines. So I've not got to traipse around 30 engines. I'm going to earmark 5 engines. Here you, when you come through the gate to the event, can you show me your paperwork or can you show me your new disc? So it cuts down the legwork. That's the whole idea of this process. And it is bang up to date. The moment something changes at one of the insurers, this system will know about it. So let's go forward then. I'm going to talk about the documents library. I've nearly done, Charlie. Okay. When you've logged in and you've chosen to go to the documents library, you've got this list here. Rally Organisers Code of Practice, COP, Purple Guide. I'll come a little bit more about that later on. It's copyright material and it's not for general circulation. I really must emphasize this, and I will do so. You've got conference material, which is slides and notes. The answer to the query that Nick picked up for Marion, hopefully we'll get onto there so you can get into it. And then there's guidance and reference documents. So you simply click on the code down the side that you're interested in. I've got some examples of I've just clicked on the code of practice code, and it doesn't show there's all on that screen, but that will scroll down and I can see all of the sections of the code of practice. And all I need to do is click on one of them that interests me, and that section will open up as a PDF document on your screen. You can download it, you can close it and forget it, you can print it, you can do what you like at that point. Okay. Similarly, I press the purple guide screen on another example, and I get all of the chapters of the purple guide. I can open it, see it as PDF, I can print it, or I can simply close it. Okay. And there's an example of the purple guide chapter. Just one example, but I'm going to just labor it a little bit, if you will. Document library. Authorized events may print for their own use, but must not print or distribute to anyone who is not a member of your authorization or organization, I should say. Please safeguard that which is precious to you and it is servicing your endeavors. Don't give it away. You must not sell it to a third party. It's valuable information. It's not yours to sell. It's yours to download, print, copy, but you cannot sell it, and please don't give it away. Now, the purple guide is quite different. We take the purple guide as members of the events industry forum. We have a licensed use of that guide, and we must be strict about its application. You can only print one copy per chapter, per event. No more than that. No more. And you must not distribute it, and you must not sell it, please. So there I am. Charlie, I've finished.
David, thank you very much for that. I think everybody would have found that very helpful. I think that's the first time we've done the web services bit. I think it was well worth doing. In the general documents, at the moment there's not very much in there, but there's been several documents that have come to my attention over the last couple of weeks while we've been putting this presentation together. Marion's one is one of them. John's got a couple that will be mentioned in his presentation.
Yes.
And we're going to get them put into that library because they'll be really useful for everybody to use.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
It's a developing scene. Yeah.
Yeah. And if anybody's got any articles that they think are useful for everybody's use, they want them to be included in the library, if you forward them to me on my email, rally.chair@ntt.co.uk, then we will consider them, and if we think they're appropriate, we'll add them to it. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to John, who hopefully is ready for us.
Oh, sorry. What happened there? So the screen has changed somewhat since I there we go. Right. Good morning, everybody. Firstly, let me apologise for my lovely clock on the wall. It will chime at 12 o'clock, so apologies for that. So we spoke at the last conference about some organisers workshops and also for Rally Monitor partners. So we've come a little way on from that. The organisers workshop is nearly completed and written, as is the workbook. So Charlie did mention it in his opening. So what I'd like to do is just go through some of the topics that we're going to cover. So, and for some reason it won't move on. There we go. So, training workshops for rally organisers. The topic covered within the workshop we're going to look at. The suggested duration, because nothing's been finalised yet, is a 9:30 start if we're doing them face-to-face with coffee and registration. And then the delivery will be from 10 till about 3:30 approximately. Okay, so the background behind the training requirements are that I think you'll all agree there's been very little training delivered in most recent years to support our rally event organisers and monitor partners. And it's only fair that if we've got a code of practice and we're talking about the Purple Guide, that we try and support our subscribers and help them through some of those documentation and the legislation. And it will portray us, hopefully, the NTT as a supported and trusted event partner. Professionally trained certificated organisers and monitors will be the outturn. And legislation is always being updated, as I just said. So there are some new challenges with controls and infections, and we heard some of that earlier in the animal presentation. And knowing your local agencies and the importance of building relationships with them, especially if you're registering your event with a local council, if you can talk to the events department face-to-face before you start, then I've found that with local agencies on site, it makes the job much simpler. And there are many more reasons which the following slides will demonstrate. So the introduction is, the introduction will start with a welcome to the organisers course. The course will be run online or at a venue or even both, because one thing I've learned through COVID and being a tutor in a college as well is that I've had learners in the classroom, delegates in the classroom, and I've had learners and delegates online. So we've done a mixed match of both. So the final outcome of how we deliver this course isn't actually decided yet, but we do have the options of delivering it both ways. So there's a PowerPoint presentation with a workbook. The completed workbook will be marked by your tutor and then verified by another NTET tutor for internal certification. So the objectives are, the course is to have a better understanding of current relevant legislation and extracts of the government's Purple Guide. Now, when we come to the monitors, they'll get extensive extracts of legislation and the Purple Guide and the NTET codes of practice, which is, of course, what the monitors measure compliance at rallies by. And rallies should work towards adopting within their events as a minimum standard. forming the correct committee. We look at verbalizing reports, because one thing I've learned, if you've got to write a report to the HSE because of a major incident, and we did have a major incident of a gas explosion when I was at a rally, and the way that I verbalized that report and the information that I sent to the HSE, along with photographs and control measures, they said that they were completely happy with what we'd done. We contained it, and they will not be investigating any further. So I think the more you can tell them in that scenario, the better it is. So the headings of the topics covered. Now there's 2 slides for this, so that's why it's called slide 1 and slide 2. We're going to look at current relevant legislation, the health and safety legislation and acts such as the Health and Safety at Work Act, LOLA, PURA, etc. The importance of compliance, COSH, and the fuel stored by exhibitors. And that's one of the things why we had the gas explosion. And what made it worse was it was a stationary engine exhibitor who had 5 batteries in his converted van and 8 cans of petrol. So it didn't really help the situation at all. We're going to look at working at height regulations. And you might think, why are we going to do that? Well, because, you know, you've got things like erecting marquees, you've got scaffolding towers if you're using them for commentary points and things like that. So safe marquee erection and documentation checks by safety officers, because although your contractor who is erecting the marquee, the safety officer as good practice should also be going around and doing their own check on the marquee. I've often gone around and found somewhere R-clips are missing or pins are missing, or some of the cross members and structure isn't finished off. And you know, if you're signing to accept that marquee, you've got to be sure that it's safe. Local authority and unitary authority requirements. Sorry. Sorry about that. Oh, my dog is very vocal. Local authority and unitary authority requirements. And again, it's about building that relationship with your local authorities. Relevant sections of the government purple guide. And I've sort of gone through the purple guide. And I think that there's around about 23 or 24 sections of the purple guide that is relevant to our kind of events. There are more in there, but those sort of sections are more relevant than others. We look at in the organisers conference, you know, training workshop is we have fun, fair and inflatable structures. And we look at PIPA and ADIPS guidance for those, just to make sure that we're in compliance. And it also gives you some guidance in there of when inflatable structures should be dismounted, etc., such a thing as high winds and things like that. And then the second slide with some more headings and topics in, we look at tractor pulling events, and we use the European Tractor Pulling Committee safety measures, which is a good guide again. And you need to be aware of these, because if you've got a tractor pulling event going on, then and if you're not what I call OC, occupationally competent, maybe in that area, you can double check the documentation that your tractor pulling contractor is giving you against these safety measures. There's been some changes with the civil aviation rules for model aircraft and drones. So we'll update people on that. And again, we've looked at animals and birds of prey guidance, etc. before, and also information from the local authority, unitary authority, RSPCA and DEFRA, and indeed our own consultants, such as we heard earlier on. And then we'll do an NTT overview of the codes of practice. Okay, it's the same old story. You can't adhere to a code of practice if you've not looked at it or you've not had a briefing on it. So it's only fair that, you know, both sides are aware of what the requirements are. We look at the Road Traffic Act 1988, because if you structure roads within your event, those roads become part of the Road Traffic Act 1988, and therefore the vehicles need to comply with the restrictions. We'll also talk about the NTET insurance scheme, and we've had a little bit from David on that already. So moving on then to the rally monitors workshops, again by Charlie and myself. We'll be looking at the same sort of setup. It's covered within the workshop, and exactly the same sort of setup as we've got for the rally organisers. In fact, what we're trying to do is link the two together in terms of doing maybe the monitors set up on the first day and the organisers delivery on the second day, where safety officers and people like that can actually attend both. But we did discuss, Charlie and I, that we're all very busy people, and it might be an idea to maybe run one workshop on one day and run another one maybe a couple of weeks later, so we're not tying up the whole weekends. So, and then topics covered for the rally monitors is an in-depth briefing on the NTET codes of practice, which is what monitors measure compliance by, and rallies should work towards adopting within their events as a minimum standard. We'll also talk a bit about British values, because, you know, the monitors are talking from people from all different kind of walks of life, different nationalities, etc. Customer service first impressions, because, you know, if you've got a good solid greeting and a good communication going with the rally as a monitor, then, you know, we're not there to inflict. We're there to guide and advise. You know, whether you take that advice is completely up to you as an organizer of a rally. All we're doing really is sharing best practice with you. We're going to talk about conflict avoidance and management. And my experience of conflict avoidance and management coming from the armed forces is that normally, I would say 60% of the time, the conflict is started by the way that that individual has spoken to the other individual, and the other individual sort of kicks off a little bit, if you like. We'll look at communication skills. We'll look at non-verbal communication, tones of voice, things like that. We'll also look at written reports for the rally monitors. Okay. And again, the verbalization of those reports and how you mention your findings, whether they're good, whether we should share that as best practice as well and adopt what a particular rally is doing, because, you know, we've got the wow factor that they've got everything covered off, or maybe it's the way that you're going to advise that rally that maybe they need to look a little bit at that, this or the other. And also the importance of guidance, because obviously, you know, we're not a governing body, so we cannot inflict any of our thoughts, ideas or rules onto you. However, you know, what we'd like to do is to give you the opportunity, if you need it, to improve or maybe do something slightly differently. So that's sort of an overview of, and the objectives of the monitors course is have a better understanding of current relevant legislation and extracts from the Purple Guide, knowledge regarding the NTET codes of practice, an awareness of British values, an awareness of customer service, and the importance of making a good first impression. Communication skills, including you know, 55% of a conversation is about body language, you know. So there's a huge chunk of that about your demeanor and how you approach the situation. Encouraging a standard approach to monitoring events. And the analogy I like to use in terms of health and safety and things like that with the learners that I teach health and safety to is, the analogy is the Marks and Spencer's cheese and pickle sandwich. Let's take something really simple. Doesn't matter whether you buy that cheese and pickle sandwich in Scotland, Plymouth, Land's End, Bournemouth, London, etc. That cheese and pickle sandwich, whilst it's not physically the same sandwich, it's made to the same standard with the same ingredients and the same amount, etc. So you have a standard approach to monitoring events. So it doesn't matter whether Joe Bloggs, Fred Smith, Jessica James turns up to monitor an event. Everyone is having the standard approach. We look at avoiding and managing confrontation. We'll also be giving positive feedback to rally organisers and how you can do that, and event safety officials. Because let's say there's been a little mistake, or maybe there's something you could do better. If you can sell it the right way, that's an opportunity to improve and not a criticism. Yeah. Verbalizing reports and guidance to event staff. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're talking to an official body, the local authority, or to an event staff member. It's about what you say and how you say it. Okay. And also making sure that the monitors are guiding and not imposing their opinions. Okay. Now, let's look at an example of a workbook. You know, this isn't like going back to school, etc. We're all adults. It's about adult learning. And with the Rally Organisers workbook, there are 10 sections within the workbook. Okay. And I've tried to keep it down to about 12 to 14 pages, because in my experience, if you go over 20 pages, two things happen. People start to lose interest. Okay. And the other thing is it makes it very difficult to email it back because of the size. And depending on your email supplier, some of them have smaller restrictions on the size of documents that you can email. And the answers and questions are done on the right-hand side there. You can see in the second page, it tells you, you'll see 4 symbols there: explain, describe, identify, state, or list. So it gives you a guidance of how you should structure your answer. So let's just take, for instance, the first page of that workbook. So I'm not going to bore you by going through all the workbook, but I'm just sort of giving you an overview. So we can see some of the symbols there. So it's asking you to explain, describe, or identify. So explain, describe, and identify are all answers that need to be structured in sentences, etc. And then list is an obvious one. You just list what you believe is the correct answer. And the slides within the course marry with and dovetail with the answers. So whilst the slide doesn't give you the whole answer, you can cherry pick from the slide while you're answering the workbook. And the way that we deliver it is that we'll go through it question by question, slide by slide. So in theory, the only way that you wouldn't make the standard is if you dropped out of the course altogether and thought, you know what, this isn't for me. Or the other one's really drastic, and we don't want that to happen, you die on program. So what I'm saying is that it's not like going back to school at all. Adult learning is completely different. And then for my last slide, I'd just like to show you an example to show you how the monitors workbook is set up in exactly the same way. So, you know, if the monitors decided to do both courses, or the safety officers decided to do both courses, then there'll be no surprises, no change in structure. Okay. And what happens with the workbook at the end of the course, you can see on the bottom of the right-hand book page there about submitting it. Once you've completed the workbook and answered all the questions and you're happy with the answers, then send the workbook as an attachment in an email to your tutor for marking, who will then send it on once it's marked for verification and certification. And the way that we're looking at it at the moment is that we've had some sort of tentative discussions. So if I deliver a course and I mark it, Charlie will verify it. And if Charlie delivers a course and marks it, then I will verify it. So, and we work very closely, and we've got, you know, the same kind of traits, the same kind of ideas. Okay. And there will be no fail. I hate the word fail. You're just working towards, because if we find an answer that's maybe a little bit weak, we can give you some feedback, email the work back to you, even if that's after the course, email it back to you and say, have a look at question number so-and-so on page whatever. Here's a copy of the slide. Maybe you'd like to change your answer slightly. So, you know, it's about getting the information across, and it's a double check that you've actually understood the information, because on all the courses that I deliver, I always ask my learners at the beginning, can somebody tell me what the most stupid question is? And they all sort of look very, very vague. But the truth to that answer is that the question that's the most stupid is the one you don't ask. So if you don't understand something that the tutor is saying, then get them to explain it in more depth. So I hope that sort of reassures you in the fact that although, you know, we mentioned this, I think it was about 18 months ago, but we haven't been sitting in our laurels. You know, the Organisers course is just about written, as is the workbook. There's a few bits of fine tuning. Charlie did mention at the beginning, I think, that there's a meeting arranged between Charlie, myself, and some consultants to make sure that the content we've got covers our needs and covers your needs indeed. Because, you know, the course is about you, not about us. So that's, I believe, is the end of my presentation. So I'll stop sharing, or the next person can share, and then take me out the equation, as it were.
John, thank you very much. As I've said already, I'm very deeply indebted to your hard work on this. And I think we've got the basis of a fantastic course. And like anything else we're doing, it will be continuously improved. We've got to start from somewhere, and I think we're starting from a very good place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like we say, you know, get a couple of courses delivered under our belt, and we will soon know if things need to be added or changed, because we will get feedback. That was the only thing that I didn't mention. Sorry, Charlie, is that we will do a course critique at the end for the delegates to fill out, so that we can use that as a learning opportunity for things that they'd like to see in there.
Very important, that, John. Yeah, it's definitely, you know, it's their course, so we need their feedback to be able to improve it for them.
Yeah,
I quite agree.
We deliver their ownership, as it were.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We're almost at the end. Nick, have we got any questions that need answering?
There was a couple that came through, a couple more for Marion, and there's one about will the web services be available all year round, which I think David answered, saying they will remain open until the 31st of December each year. There was also a query if David will be covering anything about insurance, which, as we've seen, he hasn't, but I've directed them to contact David on tsu@ntet.co.uk if they've got any specific questions.
So that's great. I've got a few things, not much. The code of practice, as you see, has now been separated into chapters, which is easier for you to download. It's also a lot easier for us to update it. There's several new things in the pipeline. Something that came to light very recently, we had an email from someone who was asked to sign terms and conditions of entry to a rally without actually having a copy of it. And when they asked for them, they couldn't be given it, which obviously is not a good thing. You wouldn't want to sign for anything that you couldn't read. No, absolutely. So one of the things that I'm looking at is to put some general guidance together of what you should include or shouldn't include in your terms and conditions. And I absolutely emphasize that it is guidance. It is not, you must do this. It will be that we think best practice is if you include these sort of questions in your entry and you send it off, if you get to sign it, bring it back, but make sure you send them the information that you're asking them to sign for, because without that, there'll be massive problems, and a lot of people just won't sign it, which I wouldn't blame them for. So that's one section. There is two draft sections which have been sat since last year, which unfortunately, due to work pressure and COVID, I haven't been able to finish off. One of those is on drones, which sort of mirrors what John's put in his presentation. And the other one is on helicopters. And that's a very easy one because it's all down to the people that are bringing the helicopter. But I have put a little section together for that so you understand that. And it refers back to the Civil Aviation Authority. Another section, I don't know if this is going to be a section or whether it will just be a reference point in pointing you to a website. And it's about terrorism, which is something that, unfortunately, in this day and age, we face. The Great Dorset was under threat a few years ago, and they actually had quite a lot of undercover people on site because they thought it was going to be a target. And this is due to the fact they'd advertised it as the national show, and that's the sort of headline, unfortunately, these people look for. There's a very good website that was directed to me by my partner in this, Stuart Gaines. Stuart's not here today. I know he's not, but he'll watch the recording. Stuart's the authorisation officer at the moment, and when you send your application, he's the person that processes that. And he pointed me to this website. It's free. It's a government website, and it gives you some good information on how to avoid being a victim of a terrorist attack, which might sound a bit extreme, but I'm afraid in this day and age, you do have to consider it. So we will put something in for that as well. We are also, we've done recently a safeguarding course, and we will be repeating that again. I'm not certain when, but that will be notified on our website. So those of you who need to do safeguarding, and I would say that's probably all of you, need to have at least one person trained in it to cover yourselves. And remember, safeguarding isn't just about children, it's also about vulnerable adults and disabled people. So there is quite a lot to it. We've done the courses at cost to ourselves. We haven't charged anybody for this so far. Hopefully we'll be able to maintain that. That'll be obviously down to what it costs us and the take-up on the courses. So if you do see that or you're interested in that, if you email myself or David about the fact that you're interested in a course, we'll see what we can get sorted out. Somebody else actually organises them, but we can talk to them and see what goes on with that. I'd just like to thank my speakers today, Marion and John, and David, of course. Fortunately, David's part of the furniture, so I forget about him. But I could not survive without him in this job. He's so much behind me, helping me. Any questions that we haven't answered, we'll put onto the website, and your answers will be there. Or if we need a direct, if we need to direct you to a particular person, we will. So we'll do that. If anybody's got any questions that they haven't put in, they'd like to put them in now, and we'll leave I think the actual chat stays open for a while. And Nick, how long have they got if they want to put a question in?
We can leave the webinar running for a few minutes. I'll turn it off when it goes quiet, really.
Yeah, okay. Can I just thank everybody who's turned up today and helped me? Nick, I'd like to thank you very much for your work in the background. And Andrew, if you're still there, not falling asleep, thank you much for your wise words. And for those of you on the General Council tomorrow, I shall see you then.
There were a couple of questions that we haven't directed to for Marion that we haven't answered yet. Might be able to answer them here.
Okay.
There was a question earlier on, what's the requirements for things such as dogs being left in cars? That was directed to Marion.
Marion, are you still on?
I am. So what we've done in the past is we monitor the car parks, and if we find that there's a dog in a car, we will continue to monitor. If the dog becomes distressed, even with windows open, then if we have security on site, we get those involved. If not, we contact the local RSPCA. We also do communications over the tannoy system, giving details of, that there's a dog in a car and can the owners return to their vehicles. If the dog continues to become distressed and there is no sign of the owners, then my suggestion is you break the quarter light, because it's the most expensive part of the car, and the windows, and then hopefully the owners will have a better idea of how to look after their animals. It is worth advising that if you have the capacity, have a logbook for any events or incidents that happen throughout your event. And then you can mark that, you found a dog at this time, this is what you did, this is what it resulted in, or the owners came back and you had a quiet word with them. But, you know, make sure you've got records of everything. So if they do come back to you and say, well, you smashed my window, you've got proof to say, well, you know, we saw your dog an hour ago. It was getting more and more distressed. We were putting out calls. You weren't answering. So we did the next best thing. And if you can, take photographs as well, timed photographs, just to cover your back end. But the RSPCA, in most cases, will advise the dog is extremely distressed, get it out.
Charlie, could I just add something to that?
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah, because we've all got sort of modern technology as well, is that to support what Marion's saying about taking photos. I've had a couple of incidents where we've had to pop a window to get a dog out. And we videoed it because it shows the dog was in distress or was like virtually about to pass out. And we submitted that, and the RSPCA wanted that to bring a prosecution, and they used our video to bring a prosecution against the owner. Because some dog owners, they park under a tree, but they forget the sun moves. And then, you know, it was nice and cool there in the morning, but in the afternoon, the sun's come round and the dog's in full heat. But the strange thing is that most events welcome dogs on site that are well behaved. So, you know, but the videoing is admissible in court now.
Yeah, very good.
What was the other question, Nick?
Second one for Marion. Thank you for the insight, very helpful. Whilst our event won't host animals on our fields and are clear for at least 30 days pre-event, we expect about 5,000 citizen visitors. Do you have any idea of how much antibac we might need and how frequently it should be dispersed?
So,
yeah, entry exits, marquees, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there isn't a set number. There is a set number of toilets and hand washing facilities that you should provide that's in the Purple Guide and the infection control document that I've sent through. Where antibac is concerned, I'd have it at the entrance of your event, so as people come in, they can use it. I'd have it at your eating areas, a couple of around there, and then you can, you know, dot them around a bit. It depends on, if you know from past experience, how many people come through the gate at any one time. So you might find in the mornings and afternoons it's not so busy, but at lunchtime everybody turns up. You know, so it's taking into account what you've had before, your number of visitors, and then just dotting them around. If you've got hand wash facilities available as well in the toilets, then that's fine. It's just been, you know, providing the additional things.
Thank you for that. Nick, anything else?
One last question from Sheffield Steam Rally. Have other organisers now had information from local councils regarding events with emphasis on safeguarding they have this time? Obviously, we don't know what other organisers have received at the moment, but... No,
that's interesting. I haven't heard that before. I know that most events now, and it's not all, now have to have what's called an event plan, which they have to submit to the local authority. I would imagine it's combined with that. I may be wrong on that. But I know that not all events at this time are having to do that, but I know it's becoming more commonplace for it. And I would imagine there's safeguarding in there. John and Marion, you both obviously got good experience on events. Have you come across this?
Yeah. Unitary Authority in Cornwall have had it in for a couple of years now, and we have to nominate on the registration form who the safeguarding officers are. But the good thing as well is that if you're using SIA registered security guards, they have a safeguarding overview, if you like, within their training as well. So we have to nominate the safeguarding officers down in Cornwall, and also a process of what we will do if we come across a child or an adult or a vulnerable adult that has, you know, got into difficulty, as it were.
For one of our main events, we have what we call, well, it's called Sanctuary now. It was the church tent. So it was a multi-faith facility where children and vulnerable adults were taken to be collected. So they all had safeguarding training and etc. For our smaller events, we do have our event safety plan, which puts in there exactly what we do. I.e., if a child comes up to a steward, a single steward, then we make sure before anything else is done, an additional steward is taken to that place and takes the details of the child. Child information, the briefest child information is passed over the radios, no names or anything like that, just make people aware, and then they're taken to a safe place, usually the control centre.
Yeah, that's great. So again, you're looking at the event safety plan, which has been put in place for the local authority, yeah?
Yeah, we use event safety plans, not just for the local authority, but for all of our stakeholders. So copies are given to our fire providers, our medical providers, our security providers, and anybody else that has a vested interest in what the security plan has to offer. I do believe this event safety plan is one of the best documents that you can have, because it explains your whole event. It explains your demographics, it explains how long it is, the numbers of people you're looking for, how you manage different things to do with food, to do with security, like I say, fire, medics, and everything like that. So all the information is in one place. And then what we do with ours is we have our main plan, and then we have all our risk assessments as appendices following that. So they can be added or taken away, and then you just change the dates.
Yeah, so our code of practice and our rally pack acts like that. But what we find is that a lot of the information now has to be put into the event plan for the local authority, because it has to get their approval. And basically we end up with two documents, and they are slightly different, because the code of practice is aimed at basically vehicle rallies, steam engines, cars, bikes, etc. Whereas Purple Guide isn't. It's more about outdoor pop concerts, as you're probably aware, Marion. That's where your specialist knowledge comes in with the agricultural shows. But it is the best guidance out there. So what we're trying to do is as time goes on, the COP will develop to be, we won't try to repeat what's in the Purple Guide. We will refer you to the Purple Guide, and the sections in the code of practice will be the ones that are specifically for the type of event we're holding, and it comes under the authorisation scheme that we work under, as we're under the Off-Road Motor Vehicle Act, and hence why we have to have a code of practice. So it is a long process. It won't happen overnight, but hopefully the two documents will work side by side, and the information will be there to fill out the event plan without any problems. I've only done a couple of event plans, and the ones I've done, the information in it came from what we've done for our own stuff already, because of what we've put in our code of practice.
Yes.
Anybody else have we got any more questions, Nick? Or
one just came in. Is there a template event safety plan that could be shared as best practice?
Unfortunately, every council is different, and they will send you a form if you contact the local authority that you're in, and that may be a district council, it may be a county council, because that varies from area to area as well. And they will send you the form, and they're normally quite simple. The one I did was for South Oxfordshire last year, when we were going to do the Appleford Rally. That never happened, unfortunately. But yeah, there isn't. The best thing you can use as a template is the rally authorisation pack, the information you put in there. A lot of that you will need for your event plan. So that will help you with that.
There is Dave, a checklist in the authorisation rally pack, Charlie.
Sorry, mate.
There is a checklist, a rally plan checklist in the pack.
Yeah. As I say, because we've recently updated it, haven't we, to reflect the fact that a lot of people have to use these plans now. So yeah, that's your best template if you want a generic one. But as I say, it's not a national thing; it's done on local areas, so everybody's different. You need to ask the local area for theirs, and they're quite willing to supply them. There's not an issue getting them.
I know with the shows that I do, we've just written our own plans and we just send that as a whole. So you might be able to get away with your pack that you send out.
Yeah. What we found is that events that are well established, which is what you're talking about with yours, if they've had no issues with them, they tend to let them run without interfering. They may turn up and do their inspections at the beginning of the show like they do on other events, but you don't get a lot of asking for filling the forms out. I think the form is there because an awful lot of things that go on, because we're not just talking about rallies, we're talking about, I suppose, even big village fates. They have to have something, and that's why they've developed these plans. So, back to you, Nick. Anything else?
No, that's all the questions we've had today.
Charlie, can I just mention about safeguarding?
Yeah, of course you can, mate.
Kathy Smith, there was an email sent out to rally authorisation events that we're looking for authorisation earlier in the year, advising that there was a safeguarding course taking place on the 26th of March at Kilsby. And I'm told, and I understand it, that this invitation went to all prospective authorised events. The closing date for that, joining that event, was the 25th of February. If anybody's still interested in that event, I'm suggesting they talk to Kathy Smith via safeguarding at ntet.co.uk, see if they can get themselves squeezed onto that course.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, David. I was aware that the email had gone out. I know Naomi did that for us, I believe. So, and like you said, if anybody has got interest for future ones, because has Kathy got a direct email? Is it the
safeguarding at ntet.co.uk?
So if everybody is interested in another course, if you send her the information, if she gets enough, she will then organise another course, because it's something that's ongoing. So yeah, there's I think Nick's just put up the email that was sent out.
That's just the details of the event, where to contact and so forth, and the date.
Posted this back to on the questions and answers on the chat line. Yeah, just now. Yeah. Okay.
So if that's it, we will call it a day. And I'd just like to thank everybody, one, for attending, and two, for helping me put it on. I couldn't have done it without you.
Thank you, Charlie. There's a quick message in the chat for you about terrorism.
I saw that. I'll have a read of it. It's something that we need to work on. So
yeah, because obviously South Cerney is MOD.
Yeah, so you've got a double problem there, haven't you?
Well, we haven't, because they help us with it. So, I've got to build a relationship with the new CO, because they've got a new commanding officer now.
Right, okay. Well, if you need me to come along and support you, let me know.
Yeah, because it's only up the road, isn't it? You can get me lunch. So.
Charlie will go anywhere for a free lunch.
No, he's buying.
Charlie,
Andrew, I believe you're missing. We're not going to see you at the Severn Valley this year.
At the where?
You're not going to be at the Severn Valley in a few weeks' time.
No, I'm on a microphone somewhere. I can't remember where now.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Anyway, yes. Can I just say I'm full of admiration for everybody listening to what's been discussed this morning. When we started writing or revising the code about 30 years ago, it was pretty simple and straightforward. And even then, we thought it was complicated. But now I think that rally organisers is to be hugely complimented on actually having the enthusiasm and the courage to run an event in the face of all the rules and regulations. But I think thanks to Marion and John and of course our own David Smith and you, Charlie, there is guidance there, and suddenly the whole thing becomes a little bit clearer and more straightforward. So well done everybody involved, and I'm looking forward to a full and active summer of events this year, all being well. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, I suppose it's down to me to end it. Nick, if there's no more questions come in, we'll say good night.
Yep, no more questions from us.
Thank you, Charlie. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Goodbye,
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
See you again.
See you later, John. Bye-bye. Bye, Marianne.
Bye now. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.